Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a kid of the 90s, so I have to say it like this. Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. Force a habit. Anyway, this movie is, I guess you'd call it a reboot of the TV show from the Disney Afternoon era. The easiest way to look at this movie and what it is imagine many decades later, after the events of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, all the Toons left Toontown and are now living among us. So humans and Toons live together, work together, and the movie focuses on how Chip and Dale met each other. Chip is voiced by John Mulaney and Dale is voiced by Andy Samberg. How they became partners, how they did rescue rangers, and then it focuses on their time apart. We cut to many years later where Chip is off selling insurance and Dale's trying to push for a Rescue Rangers reboot, right down to even getting CGified, and in this movie they refer to it as CGI surgery. However, they learn that several cartoon characters are in danger of being bootlegged. It's a long process that I'll explain later, but anyway, the bulk of this movie involves Chip and Dale reuniting to try to rescue their pal Monty, who was from the original cartoon, and it's essentially the Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers movie. So this movie is directed by Akiva Schaffer, who has done movies with Andy Samberg before. He directed Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping. He produced Palm Springs, which was one of my favorite movies of the worst year of this decade so far, 2020. And fun fact, he's also a UC Santa Cruz alum just like me. Go Banana Slugs! Anyway, this movie is kind of a Lonely Island production to begin with, and I was one of the very few people that saw the trailers for this and was not on board. There was just something about this movie that didn't quite feel right. It didn't look good, it didn't look funny at all, and then when the second trailer came out, it still didn't sell me on this movie potentially being good. But it was getting a lot of buzz, so I thought, you know what? It's a Disney Plus movie, but this is one of those streaming movies that is getting so much attention that I can't really escape it. It has its own orbit, so I might as well watch it myself. I found myself pleasantly surprised by Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. And I mentioned Who Framed Roger Rabbit and that this could coexist in the same universe as that movie. But in ways, this is the true spiritual successor to that film. Now, I know there have been other movies that have come out that people have compared to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like Wreck-It Ralph. But the movie kind of becomes its own thing and ignores all the pre-existing video game characters halfway through, so not really. This is more in line with what Who Framed Roger Rabbit was. It took a bunch of cartoon characters, and not just from Disney, but from other companies, and managed to put them all in this one movie, except since technology and animation styles have evolved since the time Who Framed Roger Rabbit not even came out but took place. This movie pretty much uses every animation style it could possibly use. It uses 2D animation, it uses 3D animation, it uses CG animation that's rendered to look like 2D animation. It uses that really creepy form of motion capture where the characters just have dead expressions in their eyes. It uses puppets, it uses stop motion. It uses every type of style to its advantage. And there's definitely more of a satirical nature to this movie than Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a very straightforward noir story. This is taking all these animation tropes that we've had over the decades and makes fun of them in a way. There is an obvious and very non-subtle screw you to Alvin and the Chipmunks. Not the brand itself, but those 4 live-action movies. And the biggest thing that this movie makes fun of is Asylum Productions. Going back to the bootlegging concept, pretty much a lot of these famous cartoon characters would be taken, they'd be redesigned and then put into bootleg movies of classic Disney films. And they're low rate, they're cheap, they're terrible, and this whole movie is just one giant knock at Asylum, and I absolutely love it. On top of that, you get several cameos. And several cameos that made my jaw drop. Like, How did you put that in there? The first 3 minutes of the movie was already full of cameos that I didn't think they could do. There's a character who looks like Ash Ketchum from Pokemon, but isn't quite Ash. There's an Autobot. And I thought to myself, okay, those 2 cameos were crazy. What else are they gonna put in? They bring in several DreamWorks characters into this movie for cameos. They bring in Randy Marsh from South Park. I'm like, this is a Disney movie. How do you get something like South Park in here? But none of that can top the cameo in this movie. The one cameo that when it popped up, I was like, no flickin' way. I meant to say flippin' and then suddenly in mid-sentence transferred to frickin'. But the point is, look, I'm gonna say what it is. This movie's been out for 2 weeks. If you haven't seen the movie or you somehow have not seen the memes on the internet, then spoilers ahead. But when Ugly Sonic popped up, the original design for Sonic the Hedgehog in these new movies, I just flipped out. I laughed hard the second that design popped up. I'm like, no way did they actually put that in this movie. And they really do make fun of this design. I know a lot of people on the internet are having sympathy towards Ugly Sonic, but man, he really is just ugly. And more specifically, they make fun of those human-like teeth. It's absolutely hilarious. So there's just a ton of really cool cameos in this movie. And then we move on to the main characters. First of all, you have both Chip and Dale, which I was a little hesitant about John Mulaney and Andy Samberg just doing the characters as their regular voices and not having their voices at a higher pitch. But then again, much like with the Alvin and the Chipmunks movie, I would have been complaining about how you got these massive talents, but you just pitch their voices so they're unrecognizable. So it was kind of a lose-lose situation for me in my mind. But once the movie actually played out, I got used to their voices, and within context of this story, it actually makes sense for them to not have squeaky voices. And I think it's really clever that Dale is a CGI version of his 2D counterpart, but they pass it off as CGI surgery. Like, okay, that's clever. That's a clever way to just take a character that's 2D, make him CG, and you give a really cool explanation for it. The animation on Chip, however, is a little rough. It's clearly CG animation, but it looks like 2D animation. And for Chip, it actually works fine. For Sweet Pete, aka a grown-up Peter Pan, voiced by Will Arnett, it so does not work. Like, the animation for Sweet Pete is terrible. Sweet Pete is actually the villain of the movie. And even though his backstory to how he became a villain is a little insensitive, I think, considering the actual history of Bobby Driscoll, the kid who voiced Peter Pan in the 1953 movie, Will Arnett does a fine job. He's a pretty fun villain at the end of the day. Nothing too memorable. J.K. Simmons voices this claymation cop, and he is absolutely hilarious. J.K. Simmons commits to this role, and the animation, if it's actual claymation, it's integrated really well with the rest of the animation and just the overall world. I mean, the way it looks, I have no reason to believe it's not clay animation, but if it's CG animation, then that's even more impressive that they made it look exactly like that type of style. Then you have KiKi Layne as the only human character that we actually follow in the movie, and she does a fine job with what she's given, but there are points in the movie where it's clear she's acting against nothing, and she has to really use her imagination to just interact with these animated characters. I'm not going to say she's bad, because she was actually really good in the Old Guard, but I think the character herself is just kind of there to be the audience avatar. She represents the fans who grew up with Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, and we just need a human character to follow among these animated characters, which I don't think you really did, but at least she got paid for it, so that's good. I don't really have much to say in terms of criticisms outside of the way Sweet Pete looks in terms of animation. But if I could circle back around to that problem I have, it's even more of an issue when you realize that there are several characters throughout this movie that are traditionally animated like 2D characters, and they don't look like they're CG characters with 2D coding on. So it just bugged me. For Chip it was fine, but for Sweet Pete it was pretty horrendous at points. At the end of the day though, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers was a lot of fun and quite a surprise because the trailers did not sell me on this movie, and I seemed like I was the only one to not be sold on the movie through the trailers. But I enjoyed it. It really is the true spiritual successor to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Lots of fun cameos, really clever script. It might go into some cliched areas in terms of the story aspects of the script, but I think a lot of the dialogue works well. It's just a blast. I'd say it's worth seeing in your lifetime. If this doesn't make my best of the year list, which it's pretty low on my list so far that it might not, it's certainly going to stick around for the biggest surprise of the year. Because again, I didn't expect this movie to be good. Oh look, this movie's actually pretty good. So hey, screw me, right? But yeah, worth seeing in your lifetime. It's a lot of fun. And there you go, that's my review for Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. I hope you enjoyed it. And now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what'd you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching my review for Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.